Alright, let's learn how to make epoxy river wine caddies. So first off, I took this 7 board foot piece of cherry that I had laid around, and I drew a river style design all the way down from front to end, which is where the epoxy will get poured into. Next, I took my grinder with my shaping disc and I traced both lines all the way down to reveal the design that I had drawn out, which is where the epoxy will be poured into. This is what you end up with when you're done using the shaping disc. You can see the channel that you created where the epoxy will get poured into. I recommend going about 1/4 inch deep because later on you'll probably run these through the planer and you want to make sure that you have enough space to work with. Next, I took them over to the miter saw station where I cut them all down to size. The dimensions I went with were 10.5 inches long, and this board is already 5.5 inches wide. So those will be your dimensions if you plan on doing this project. And out of that 7 board foot, I wound up getting 10 wine caddies out of it, so not too bad. Next up, I took them over to the sanding station and used Gator Finishing's micro zip to sand off all the rough edges and to get a smooth surface, because when you do the epoxy pour, you want to make sure that you have a smooth surface. Next up came the epoxy pour, which is probably the funnest part of this project. Here you're going to see the different colors I used from Black Diamond Pigments, and the epoxy that I used was from Total Boat. I'll be doing a video on how to use epoxy here pretty soon, so stay on the lookout for that. All I did was use clear packaging tape on the ends of these wine caddies, but make sure you use enough or else it'll create a mess. I didn't have any Tyvek tape on hand, so that's what I had to use. Click that subscribe button and that bell notification so you know when I post up new videos. Next up, I took them over to the drill press station where I used a 1.5 inch Forstner bit to drill out the hole for the wine bottle. I then used a 1 inch Forstner bit to drill out the holes for the wine bottle glasses. Take note to measure the size of your glass because the distance from the holes will be different based on the size of the glass. Also take note, this is after I ran them through the planer, so right now they're nice and smooth. Next up, I didn't want to leave these wine caddies square. I wanted to give them a rounded edge, so I used a piece of sandpaper to create some lines that I can cut out later with my jigsaw. I then found that my woodpecker mini gauge was actual perfect size to create these slots where the wine glasses would slide into. So I used it as my gauge and marked out the lines so I can cut them out later. Next up, I used the jigsaw to cut out those lines that I had traced out for the slots for the wine glasses, as well as the lines that I traced out to create that round over edge. I then later took it over to the belt sander to finish it off. Once all the sanding was done, I took them over to a different workstation where I used my branding iron on the back of each wine caddy. This really gave a finishing touch right before I put the finish on. Once all that was done, I took them over to give them a nice oil bath with walrus oil. This really brought out the grain and the cherry and the diamond pigments inside the epoxy. Once you've finished all that, you have your first epoxy river wine caddy. Here's how they look, ready to take out to parties. So get out there and do it yourself. This is GR Woodwork. Till next time.